Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to today's SpeakOut in honor of Earth Day. We have some great speakers joining us today to discuss the exciting topic of sustainability and career opportunities in the construction industry. As well, I'd also like to acknowledge Tridel in being a principal and founding sponsor of Bolt. Bolt is a charitable foundation that works to inspire the next generation of construction professionals right here in the Greater Toronto area. Before we get started, I also want to acknowledge and thank our series sponsor, RBC Future Launch, for their generous support of this important initiative to help close the information gap and get more youth interested in construction careers. Let's play the series sponsor video now.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mark Beckles, and I'm the Vice President of Social Impact and Innovation here at RBC. Today, youth are the most unemployed age group in Canada, with almost 800,000 young Canadians not currently in employment, education, or training. Canada's skilled tradespeople that have long been the backbone of our economy are more critical than ever, and so is solving this sector's main challenges: the underrepresentation of women and immigrants, the need to double down on digital training, and the ongoing stigmas around trades careers. And while these challenges are significant, so are the opportunities. Through the RBC Future Launch partnership with Bolt, we aim to ensure that you understand what opportunities are available in the skilled trades industry and how to get started in a career that you are passionate about. Because at RBC, we see a future in your future.
Perfect, thank you. Can we please go to the next slide? So I want to let everyone know a bit about myself. I'm Graham Armster. I'm going to be moderating the panel today. And I'm Tridel's Director of Innovation and Sustainability. Got a background in mechanical engineering, and I worked as a mechanical engineering consultant for 7 years. Got a broad understanding of sustainability and building systems and the overall construction process for that. And then I took that knowledge over to the development side, and now I've worked for developers for over 6 years. Now sitting in my current role as Director of Innovation and Sustainability. Next slide. So, one of the main reasons we're doing this here today is also in honor of Earth Day. It's Earth Week. Earth Day is April 22nd, this Saturday. And just to give you a little bit of interesting facts about Earth Day, it was first celebrated in the United States on April 22nd back in 1970. And over the years, it has become a major day for environmental action, celebrated by over 1 billion people in many countries around the world. In 1990, Earth Day Canada was founded and is a charitable organization that inspires and supports citizens and organizations in taking action for the planet across the country. Each year's campaign has different focuses, and this year the public is invited to take action and support environmental organizations working in the 7 main fields that you see up on the screen here. So a lot of great stuff on the go, and we encourage you to get involved. Next slide. So kind of warming you up for our panel discussion today, some important terms that you may hear and are important for you to know. One is net zero emissions, which, as you can see there, is achieving an overall balance between greenhouse gas emissions produced and greenhouse gas emissions taken out of the atmosphere. Also, accounted for in 3 buckets known as scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, as well embodied carbon. And what embodied carbon is really the emissions generated in mining, producing material, and ultimately erecting that material and putting that up into a building, as well as the full life cycle of maintaining that material. A newer term that's coming out in the industry and what people are accounting for. And then lastly, sustainable development, which we like to align to the triple bottom line, which is people, planet, and prosperity. And looking to meet the needs of those 3 categories, both in the near and setting up for success so that we can continue to meet them in the future. Next slide. So net zero, we just talked about it. What does that mean for the world? Well, back in 2016, the Paris Climate Agreement was signed, and really the world came together and said, hey, we've got a problem here. It's climate change, and we need to do something to address it. So out of that, we kind of pinpointed a few things, one of which is that, global temperatures can't change, or we got to aim to keep that temperature change to 1.5 degrees and rise from pre-industrial levels, and not exceed 2 degrees. And really what that means is, from a global target, most organizations or all organizations should be targeting net zero emissions by 2050. So that's the world. Now, what has Toronto said? Toronto said, hey, we want to be leaders. We want to do better than the world. And so they've actually set a target of net zero by 2040, so which, we applaud, and are proud of being developers who build and encourage sustainability in Toronto. The other interesting thing is, the amount of construction activity in the city of Toronto. Globally, emissions in the buildings industry are said to be around 40%. You can see we're at 58%, and part of that has to do with just the sheer growth of the city over the years. Next slide. So now the fun stuff. I'd like to introduce, I'm very excited to introduce you to our speakers here today. First up, we have Fernando Carew. He's a manager of renewable energy and net zero development at the City of Toronto. Fernando, did you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Graham. So happy to be here. Actually, thanks for the invitation. And this is a really important part of our work to ensure actually that we can share actually the excitement that we both that we all have for this energy transition that we're going through. So my work at the city, actually, much like Graham, I'm an engineer. I worked actually in consulting in the private sector, on development, electric vehicles. And for about the last 10 years, actually, I've been at the City of Toronto, working on a climate action plan. And my focus actually is on the innovation and implementation piece. So we work on standards, for green development. One of the other areas that has become quite important actually is how to utilize municipal infrastructure for climate action. So we've done things like connect buildings to sewers, which may sound yucky, but I mean it's a way actually to displace actually fossil fuel use and so on, right? So quite exciting area to be in. I always joke, and by the way, I've got 3 kids and 2 of them are in high school, so we're having this discussion at home in terms of careers and so on. That it's good to be a good surfer, but you need a good wave to surf as well. And I think there is no bigger wave than this massive energy transition that we have upon us to a renewable future. So thanks, Graham.
I love that surfer analogy. My kids are young, but when they get older, I'm definitely going to use that one. Next up, and thank you again, Fernando, for being here. Next up, I want to introduce Shariza Jawani. She's a senior energy analyst at EQ Building Performance, Inc. Shariza, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Graham. I'm very excited to share my experience today. So as Graham mentioned, I'm a senior energy analyst at EQ Building Performance. And before I get into exactly what I do on a day-to-day, just wanted to give a little bit of background about how I got here. Similar to a lot of you, you're probably thinking about what you want to do in university or after high school. And for me, that meant looking at my interests and my strengths and the clubs I was involved in. And a lot of that led to math and science and environmentalism. And so that was a natural transition for me to go into mechanical engineering. In between my 3rd and 4th year, I took a 16-month internship in aerospace defense, which was a little bit of a side kind of pathway from what my passions and goals were, but important to recognize that all experience is good experience and all experience is transferable experience. So coming back from that internship, I really reflected again on what was important to me, and that was sustainability. And from here, I found my current role in EQ Building Performance, where what I do essentially is make buildings more energy efficient and sustainable. I do things like look at electrical, mechanical, and architectural design in both new developments and retrofits. And what's really cool about going this pathway is, first of all, how universally accessible or universally used buildings are. So I feel like I'm having an impact on so many people. And also just the baseline that it's given me to work on things like ESG within EQ and have other opportunities to pass on my knowledge through the Canadian Green Building Council Emerging Green Professionals Executive Team. It's quite a mouthful. Yeah, so thank you. Looking forward to sharing more.
Cool, Shariza. You already are off the hop, have some great experience. So I can't wait to pull that out of you as we start talking in this panel. And last but not least, we've got Daryl Chow here. He's the Director of Business Development at Geosource Energy Inc. Daryl, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
Great, thanks very much, Graham, and thank you everyone on the forum today for taking the time to hear a little bit about sustainability. Great to be on the same team here as Fernando and Shariza. So always a pleasure to be in your company, you two. My name is Daryl Chow, Director of Business Development for Geosource Energy. Let me just start by giving a quick high level. So Geosource Energy, what we do as a company is that we actually, we're a technology company and we deliver low carbon heating and cooling solutions to buildings. And by that, we mean we're able to deliver electrified solution that heats and cools buildings without the need to combust natural gas. So in this case, your GHG emission, your high carbon intensive fuel sources that are necessary for our buildings. And you'll probably hear about this a little bit later about what buildings contribute to, let's say, our cities. That the largest contributors, our buildings are the largest contributors to GHG emissions in any urban setting. So I think that kind of sets a tone, as Graham has done earlier. So my personal role here, I've spent the last 20 years as a partnership development specialist. I spent my time working largely in the higher education and not-for-profit sectors, where really my role was around engaging companies, develop better strategic interactions to make sure that they were more socially accountable. Meaning that we want companies to behave in a particular way that is going to be good for society. So in my career through some of the various places that I was employed, I met this company, Geosource, where I currently work, and really understood that here's a company that is really innovative. And they're here to provide a solution that helps us get to where we want to go. So if net zero is where we want to go, if we're aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals that the UN has put out, the Paris Accord, this technology has the ability to be a big influencer in helping all of us get to where we need to go from a carbon reduction perspective. So my role at Geosource is largely around business development, account management. I do a lot of work on the marketing side, and as well, I do some work in advocacy and stakeholder engagement, whether it's engaging with municipalities and providing some education on that front, or in this case, speaking to school boards and aspirational students like yourselves, trying to figure out where they can see a great place in the world for them, or whether it's talking to governments directly about changing the way that the rules or policy initiatives are put forward that will help us get to where we want to be to provide for a low carbon future. With that, I'll turn it back to the team. Thank you very much in advance for your time, and I look forward to maybe getting into the weeds of sustainability and construction. Thanks.
Perfect. Well, I guess we'll leave it at that. I'm really excited at this point, having heard the introductions from our panelists here to just jump right into things. So I think that's what we'll do. Fernando, why don't we start with you? I've got a question here for you. What are the most promising sustainable career opportunities in the construction industry that align with the Toronto's renewable energy and net zero development goals?
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Graham. To name a few, actually, and clearly we benefit from multidisciplinary teams. So you would know actually that the city hires actually urban planners, right? So urban planners work in the design and development of sustainable cities, right? And they try to balance economic, social, and environmental needs. So that typically is a graduate degree, but it includes actually data scientists, includes actually mapping experts, geographical information systems, and so on, right? So that's a big area that you would expect actually for the city to employ. Another one actually would be the sustainable buildings and construction. We do have quite a big portfolio actually of buildings. So these professionals work to design, build, and maintain sustainable buildings that are energy efficient, environmentally friendly, and that they're cost effective. And this would include things like architects, engineers, builders, but more increasingly actually project managers, technicians, and the maintenance. Buildings tend to get designed and built, but the longer life actually really is the operating phase, right, which requires a lot of the other specialties. To give you a couple more, actually, environmental scientists for sure is function or talent that we'd like to attract. And essentially, they study human impacts to the natural environment and develop strategies to mitigate those impacts. So a climate action plan was largely informed by research and policy done by environmental scientists, right? And includes actually air, water, waste management, renewable energy, and other things. Like urban planners, we also have sort of a different discipline, which is still transportation. So the idea of the whole transportation planning, design, and implementation of sustainable transportation, not only actually the transportation itself, but the green streets, the ability to actually divert storm water to actually water trees, and how those trees actually come to maturity and help actually with the heat island effect, and provide a sustainable also sink for carbon as the trees grow. They in fact take carbon out of the air. So that's another big area as well. And maybe lastly, actually, would be the whole idea of sustainable energy specialists, that work to develop and implement renewable energy solutions. We try to lead by example at the city, so we have over 100 plus solar installations on city roofs. We have green roofs. We've got net zero emissions buildings, community centers, city centers, and building integrated solar actually at different buildings. So the idea being actually that I think you pretty much get the idea actually that whatever your inclination is, whatever your passion is, we need you for to implement the climate change, right? So you don't really have to choose. This is just sort of a short list actually of professionals and non-professionals, so the full range of colleges and universities that we hope to excite you, that would be a fulfilling and a meaningful career for any young person.
That's great, Fernando. And I'm sure like one of the coolest parts of the job, I have to imagine, is you spend all this time and thought in planning and trying to guide the city in the right direction, and maybe you get your hands dirty with a few projects, and then next thing you know, you're walking down a street and you see a project that you had spent tons of time on and direct influence, and see it come to life. Must be so rewarding.
Yeah, really good point, Graham. So our deputy mayor actually has released a short video. I think it's about a minute and a half for Earth Day. I think it was released this morning, and she toured actually a bunch of facilities. A lot of the work that my team and I have been involved in, anything from renewable gas, from solid waste, to net zero buildings, right? And one of the ones that she was impressed with actually was we lowered a heat exchanger actually into the lake at the at the Water for Neighborhood Center, with solar panels and batteries and heat pumps and so on, and we're able to do it cost effectively, for existing building, right? So we're trying to show that again, triple bottom line to your point, that these things are need to be done. They can be done economically, right? And in fact, they will actually help the economy and create a wonderful array actually of green jobs, right? So
Yeah.
we're really excited about that.
Very cool. Very cool. Shariza, I'd like to point things over to you now. What has been the most notable sustainable development project that you have seen implemented in real life?
Yeah, so there are kind of two directions that I want to take this. So the first is actually looking at a retrofit project that I worked on very recently, and kind of looking at it from the stage of when planning was done, looking at things that could be upgraded within an apartment building, and then actually looking at the impact of those afterwards. That's really interesting because in Toronto, we have so many buildings that are already built and they need to become more sustainable in order to hit that net zero goal. And it's a big task to actually go in and retrofit those, which will happen over decades. But actually being able to see that happen is really cool. And then on another front, in new developments, I'm pretty early in my career, so I haven't quite seen a project quite through from start to finish, but I have seen a couple of projects through different milestones within the development. And one of these projects is on Queen Street, where I got to see it early in design when things were just being sorted out. And then at a later stage when the developer decided that they want to make their building a little bit more efficient. So being able to work on that. And then one day sitting on a streetcar and on Queen Street and actually going past the building and seeing the site where the development was going to go up. So it's very, very cool in the building industry too to actually be able to see the tangible impact or your efforts.
Cool, that's great. Is there any efficient, like what kind of energy efficiency changes did they end up making? Are you able to shed some light on that?
Yeah. Speaking very generally, looking at things like heat recovery.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, heat recovery, changing mechanical systems towards electrification, rather than using natural gas boilers, that kind of thing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's interesting how it's been often thought that like in varying industries, there's been different levels of innovation. On the construction side and development side, there's been thought that it's been slow to innovate. But, Shariza, I don't know what your thoughts are, but on my end, I've certainly seen a drastic change from that standpoint. And innovation aligned with sustainability is really, really starting to take off. Would you say you've seen the same too?
Oh, yeah. And the great thing, even in the last 2.5 years that I've been working, from the first project I worked on to the projects I'm working on now, the different mechanical systems that are being integrated, like more frequent use of heat pumps, for example, is really great because before it was very cost prohibitive. But as there's more innovation going on, as more buildings are installing these more efficient measures, it's becoming more accessible, which I think is something that's really, really important right now if we want to hit our net zero targets.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I appreciate that. Let's jump to Daryl now. Daryl, what sustainable career opportunities are available for someone with a background in construction management, skilled trades, architecture, or engineering technologies?
Yeah, thanks for that. And I think that, in a way, Fernando has already characterized some of the jobs and careers that are available right now. But I think we can, from my perspective, maybe something a little bit more more abstract. I think overall the opportunities are growing. To your point, Shariza and Graham, about technology becoming new, being more adopted. These are creating building systems that require new specializations, new understanding. So I would say that we're just now, because of the advent of technologies and the renewable, sustainable techniques, a lot of the opportunities are not yet known or well defined. Back, a number of years ago, I remember hearing a soundbite saying that, much of the jobs that we're going to need in the future have yet to be created. And I would say the same thing for the construction side. That said, there will always be a requirement for project managers, pre-construction people, people who have a really, a very high degree of aptitude and expertise in the skilled trades. architects who can start envisioning new types of buildings using the new materials that are available, looking at the various ways that we integrate our community planning based on engineering technology and shared community energy systems. I think there's a lot to be thought through around how are we going to be designing our cities of the future. So I guess, on the one hand, you'll have your typical office, your management, your consulting side, the office work that will be done. And I think that more and more people that have an interest and an articulation of sustainability and holding renewables core to their chest, I think that that's going to be very important for industry as we develop these new jobs. On the other side, on the field construction side, I think that it's important for the young people in the audience, like think about, don't pigeonhole yourself per se. Look at all of the technologies that you're hearing about right now and having an understanding about how each one of those technologies plays well together is going to be important. So I guess when we talk about sustainability and renewables, it evokes an image of wind farm, right? It evokes images of solar panels. In our case, it's about infrastructure that's in the ground. At the end of the day, really understanding those various technologies and how they fit together is going to be important. So maybe that's an approach that you might want to take as you think through where you want to go and how you want to study, as being more of a technology generalist, and then finding your passion and then specializing. What we like to do in our company is to think about buildings as a whole, as a unit. It's an ecosystem onto itself. So whether you're kind of looking at using a mass timber technique and then adding on some kind of external solar cladding, enabling with heat pump technology, all of those pieces are actually there to support each other. And so the better you are looking at the system as a whole, the more you can consider how to move into specialized opportunities in that space. So on the construction side, if you understand how the solar piece works with the high performance thermal characteristics of the building coupled with the heat pump, I think that'll give you an advantage when you come into industry and say that, this is how we're going to be looking at things moving forward. We're no longer looking at engineering problems the same way as we used to. We're starting to look at them in a more holistic sense and really beyond the building itself from a community level. So I would say think broadly and choose your specialization later.
No, it's an interesting point. How there was this thought many years ago that you had to specialize in something. When now coming out in the industry, it's all about integration. Bringing in a whole different perspective and views, and not looking at things in isolation. And when we use that approach, often we've been able to deliver the best solution, going back to the triple bottom line for the people, planet, and prosperity, right? So I like what you said there, Daryl. I also I have to say this, I don't know why, but going back to the technology that your company deploys, geothermal technology, I also like to link things back for a simple understanding to to Mother Nature, where often there's this term now called biophilic design. And basically the premise of geothermal is it's no different than what Mother Nature does in terms of, you have animals who live way up north in the freezing cold, and it's like, how do they survive there? Well, they burrow underground and they get to a point where they're below the frost line and the ground just stays at that level temperature and they're able to survive as a result. Geothermal is no different, right? We're surviving and heating and cooling our buildings from the ground, and looking to Mother Nature for these solutions is never failed us in the past. So I don't know why, I just felt the need to say that.
I appreciate that, Graham. I think that there's a very romantic and yet poignant relationship between renewable technologies and their connection to the planet, to the earth itself, whether it's geo or others. I mean, you think about talking about harnessing our sun.
Yeah.
There's only one sun. We harness that sun. In our case, we harness the earth, right?
Yeah.
Others in this space, they harness the wind. And so it really is about looking at what's available and what the planet and what our atmosphere gives us, and being in harmony with that. So I really do appreciate that comment you made. Thank you for that.
Yeah, that's cool. Awesome. All right, let's jump over back to Fernando. Fernando, how can partnerships and innovation be leveraged to accelerate the adoption of sustainable building practices and technologies in the construction industry?
Yeah, good question, Graham. I think that when, especially when we're trying to transition to a new way of doing things, almost like sort of a new recipe for doing energy, for doing buildings, right? You have to, you cannot avoid actually almost exploring partnerships, right? So we know that in the city, for example, to give you people a concrete example. The city corporation, meaning the buildings that we own and the fleets and all that, they only represent about 5% of the emissions, carbon emissions in the city. So clearly, even if the city corporation were to actually do everything that it's supposed to do, actually, we wouldn't technically move the needle per se, right? So partnerships, with the development industry, partnerships with renewable energy providers, partnerships with consultants, right? All of them, represented in this call by you guys, right? We wouldn't be able to do that. So the concept actually is that the task actually at hand is quite enormous, right? We got to where we are, in a matter of decades, right? In terms of the choices we made about how we build and how we get our energy and so on. I think it's exciting to sort of look at it in terms of the glass being half full, especially for this young audience, right? That hey, guess what? We need to rebuild and we need to reinvent, right? Not just operate what was given to us, but it's an opportunity to rethink, reinvent, reconfigure. And I think that can only be done in a partnership situation, right? And then when you look at even any other sort of industry, for example, like the construction industry or renewable energy industry, it's really about partnerships to begin with, right? Because it requires so many sort of different talents, right? Around planning, trying to bring projects on budget and on time, right? Even communicating the activity, right? So that's why I sort of underscore what I said earlier, actually, that it's not so much actually about selecting careers actually in climate change, but almost whatever your talent, whatever actually your interest is, right? You can actually apply that to this awesome task that we have up before us, which represents an enormous opportunity, right? Because I can tell you actually that as I round out, for example, even my team actually, we're looking for people that can write well to tell the story, and folks that can actually handle sort of social media, and people that can look at of course spreadsheets, but I mean also soft skills, right? Like trying to do tours of facilities and so on, right? So I go back to partnerships being extremely important actually, and then the big tent approach in terms of skills and talent, right?
I love what you said there, because often, well, maybe I'm the only one that make that mistake. I feel like other people may make this mistake as well. But when you think green jobs, naturally people just think, oh, solar, like Daryl said, or wind, or like I need to go do something technical, or waste, right? And naturally, those are some options, but they aren't the only options, because behind those options, you need, like you said, all the other important skills that come together to make the solution successful, right? Such as, finance, to your point, the social, being able to tell that story. Often, in my role as innovation, the hardest part of my job in terms of rolling out a new solution is the partnership, right? Getting people to partner with me and say, hey, that's a great idea. And if I can't tell the story, then the idea is going nowhere. So I love what you said there. And I imagine for you, Fernando, with your team, not only are you striking partnerships with, private entities and trying to help, connect the dots to, get to the end goal. But you're also, forming partnerships within at the city, right? In terms of different planning departments and, like you said, you telling your story so they understand maybe the impact of some of their decisions on the overall end goal.
That's very well said, Graham. So we are actually, a pretty compact division, environment and climate within the big city corporation, right? And in fact, actually, like we don't control assets, so we don't own, buildings and so on, right? So by necessity, when we come up with a plan or idea, right, then we need to sell it internally, right? So I need to go and talk to the general manager of Toronto Water and say, hey, do you mind if we put a big hole in your sewer so we can get some energy from it? And he says, no way, no, please don't do that, right? Joking, but I mean, the idea being that there's not really much in it for, the water department in that case, right? Initially, but then, once we do the project, right, and we tour it, with the deputy city manager, the deputy mayor, and we look at, sort of the context and how we can scale that up. And in fact, use, existing infrastructure has been paid for and energy that's been essentially, wasted, right? And harnessing it to decarbonize like an entire hospital campus, right? That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So to your point, right now, actually, that we've done the work, like kind of the engineers and the architects actually are sort of done, right? The idea now actually is to get constructed, right? And brought in, on time and on budget. Telling the story is going to be extremely important to capture the imagination of people that we can truly actually through and partnerships is another way of saying we're going to go horizontal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, if you can actually solve the problem within your team, so that's kind of like a vertical, right? So you have something that can be done by one team, right? But we find that when it comes to climate, actually, it's cooperation across teams, right?
Completely.
So it's a bit of a nested, kind of horizontal, partnership. So we partner, with different units in our own department. We partner actually with, city divisions and corporations, Toronto Hydro, community housing, Waterfront Toronto, right? And then we partner actually externally, also with other levels of government, certainly actually with the, development community, consultants, right? So in a way, actually, maybe the answer is, I don't know how we would do this without partnerships.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And the more you talk about it, I'm like, there's so many opportunities for jobs for students in the field. Like you said, you talked about it horizontally, you talk about it vertically within your department, but then there's also the vertical within the different levels of government too, right? And I'm sure you deal with, at the municipality level, you're probably dealing with other municipalities and learning from each other. There's green jobs in the city of Toronto, but the other municipalities. Then you're dealing with the provinces. There's green jobs in the provinces or in the province of Ontario, but then the other provinces, and then the same thing all the way up to the federal level, right?
Absolutely. Actually, look, we have a responsibility of being the biggest city in Canada. So we have actually we do have the largest, by a long shot, sort of climate and environment team in the country. So what we also do actually is we're a mini university. So we end up training a lot of folks actually that then end up going to other municipalities and other roles, right? And we're happy to do that. Cool. We don't see it as a brain drain. We see it as a brain gain.
Yeah.
For climate, right?
Yeah.
We have multiple roles, multiple hats, but I cannot stress enough, especially obviously for the students, that to Daryl's point, actually sort of get exposed actually to all these opportunities. If I go back to when I was sort of in high school and so on, you have a very narrow view of what the opportunities are. So don't suffer from a lack of imagination. So participating actually in events like this, actually, I think is extremely important, right?
Yeah.
And then I go back to, again, you can actually use your talents, right, for an area that not only has a really noble and almost necessary mission for us to solve, climate and transition to renewables, right? But it will be a significant area of opportunity because it's growing, right?
Yeah.
So I would actually again make note of these concepts, right? That whatever your talents are and your inclination, right? you can actually find sort of a career in climate. And then to reach out to folks like us, to read about it, to research and Google, and find out, actually get exposed actually to sort of more options than what you would know normally.
Sure, no, and I always love going to the Toronto Green Standard, the city site, and create TO. There's all this great information on some of the goals of the city for addressing various sustainability initiatives, from carbon emissions to waste to water, and I don't know, I'm nerding out at this point, but it's there's just a lot of good content there.
Yeah, maybe one last thing. Today we released our Transform TO Climate Action Plan progress report. So we're going to be doing that annually.
Cool.
And so there's a press release about it. So happy to actually make that available, or you can even Google it. City of Toronto Climate Action Plan progress report, Transform TO, and it has a really nice, digestible, for students in terms of an executive summary, right? What are we up to? What is the intent, right? And how are we doing actually in all these different categories, right? And you'll find that we have something like 37 sort of major initiatives ongoing, different sort of levels and different
awesome
aspects. So definitely a good resource to again expand your mind actually about what's out there, right?
And see the opportunities, right, in terms of where the industry's heading. I think that's great. I guess next up, Shariza, I'm going to jump back to you. How do you leverage your position, skills, and experience to drive the adoption of sustainable building practices and technologies in the construction industry?
Yeah, so I actually want to go back and touch on a point that Fernando made about using your soft skills too. And then something I mentioned at the beginning, that all experience is good experience. So looking at things like communication, which is so important in anything that you do, and developing those skills in university, whether through volunteer positions, whether through babysitting, that is stakeholder management right there. You're learning how to communicate with those kids, or whether your food industry experience. So I find that within my day-to-day work and as a consultant, I really need to understand where my client is coming from, what is motivating them. A lot of the time it's cost, a lot of the time it is actually sustainability, and being able to communicate well exactly the benefits of what I'm proposing. So that could be through incentives, through programs like the Toronto Green Standard or LEED, or even operational savings. So having those soft skills that you can kind of transfer is really, really important. And then a little bit more specifically on the energy and sustainability consulting side is really getting into the conversations early when buildings are just being thought of. It's just being considered. Being able to set those goals saves the client time and money. It helps to create kind of the best building that you could you could build. And you're able to kind of give more insight into opportunities within sustainability for developments.
That's a really good point. I having been in the consultant space myself, there's nothing more frustrating than having a good idea that doesn't go through because maybe you just didn't communicate or sell it or tell the story or present it the right way. So having that skill is so beneficial, not only in moving forward with these great ideas, but I think it's pretty obvious as well that as students are starting to head out into the world and maybe go to school and look for jobs. Not only are you selling technologies, but you also got to sell yourself as well. So I think that skill probably comes handy in many ways.
Yeah.
Great point. So I guess, Daryl, next we'll jump over to you. How have you seen corporate business practices change as a result of a transition to a lower carbon future?
Yeah, thanks for that. I think that we've seen some significant change, and I would maybe kind of think that my colleagues on the call here today have also seen. I mean, as Shariza mentioned, I mean, you're looking at projects that really are kind of always at a point where they have to balance cost with sustainability. So if you look at that, what the corporate businesses that we've seen, the change there is around really embracing their corporate responsibility. So in as much as they have to balance the cost of things and profit motive and whatnot, there is that adherence and that need to listen and address sustainability. And whether that because they're looking to earn consumer trust, as an example, or corporately they are setting ESG or environmental sustainable or governance targets to make sure their shareholders are satisfied. I think that move to the companies to put people and planet side by side with prosperity or profits, it leads companies to become more accountable. And so that's been the significant change is having these levers that are corporately driven say, this is the type of company that we need to become for the various reasons, right? I think what's important for the audience today is like, as more companies do this, and when they do this, what happens is that it starts to attract the right type of talent. Let's be clear, the people that we're speaking to in the virtual room right now, you will be leaders of tomorrow. That's just a function of time. And so if you're an individual who's committed and determined to really embracing and bringing up aspects of diversity and equity and inclusion, and you bring that into the workforce, regardless of what you're doing, it will help those companies achieve their targets. So at the end of the day, when a company, and it's not like they decided this is the right thing to do. When they move into the space where they need to be more responsible, it will bring better talent to them. And hence that company, in essence, in theory, should become, more profitable, more known, more successful. And really, it's just that incorporation of bringing in talent that's committed to EDI, that's going to inform what that leadership for the company looks like in the long term. So what we're seeing right now is, a bit of a changing of the guard, and that is happening where we've got, new kind of younger corporate leadership that are more purely aligned with doing the right thing. So I think that's been a big thing that we've seen as a transition. And I guess the other thing, speaking to, the technology minded on the call, I think that, certain things that we have in the digital space right now, as far as social and media platforms, so on and so forth, really call out and challenge the way that companies are behaving in our society. And so with that additional pressure, it actually has accelerated the need for companies to be responsive and be responsible and really get behind the thrust that, hey, look, climate change is real. We're all in this together. And we see a much longer road if we can get to solving these problems together more quickly. So, thankfully, that's the type of change that we're seeing in industry right now. And, again, looking at Fernando and his team putting forward the Toronto Green Standard, which is a great catalyst for having more high performance buildings. I mean, this is where that partnership element comes into play. So you've got government levers, you have companies deciding that they need to be better citizens, and then you have the right minds coming into industry saying that this is the type of company that I work for, because it's not about us right now, it's about us in the future. So it's all a positive, and I see so much opportunity ahead for our young people of tomorrow. It is really bright future for you all.
That's great. I love what you said too about like reporting and being the level of transparency starting to go up and change from that perspective. Fernando mentioned earlier that the city is reporting to on their success in terms of how they tackle their emissions targets. There's a new terms coming out of the industry in terms of ESG and companies reporting on some of their goals and the cool things they're doing and how they're achieving them. So that's another great resource, I think, for students is, if you have a favorite company out there, to look and see if, what they're reporting on. If they have an ESG report, maybe some of the initiatives they're working on, and you can kind of see, oh, wow, they're working on this cool initiative here. I might actually want to do that, or maybe have a career down that path. That's another great way to find opportunities. I guess, Fernando, well, this question's for all of you, but Fernando, maybe if you could jump in first. What's your advice to people who are interested in sustainability? How should they get started?
Yeah, good question. So, look, I'll go back actually to maybe I'm sounding like a broken record. And this is advice actually that I give my kids. So as I mentioned, I actually have 2 kids who are in high school right now, and they're quite actually, to be honest, to my surprise, they're quite lost about sort of what direction to go on, right? And I give them a couple of sort of nuggets of advice, right? Which is, look, watch yourself and look at the things you do that nobody asks you to do, right? So that's a good sort of thing to do actually, because that means actually the things you do that nobody asks you to do actually things you're interested in. So it's very important actually to find out, especially as a young person, right? What resonates with you, what areas, what things that you're interested in. Because if you're interested in them, then it means actually you'll more likely actually to apply yourself and succeed, right? And then once you actually have a bit of a sense of that, or at the same time, try to figure out actually who do you know, who do your parents know, who do you know, to start investigating, what would be sort of career or job outlook, right? So I know that I've set up my kids, to talk to family, friends, and friends of friends, right? To visit people at their place of employment, right? And get a sense, of not only things that they like to do, but also things that they don't want to do, right? So it's equally important to find out what things you're not interested in, right? So to narrow it down. But I find that, to be honest, actually, we should probably do a better job at actually helping young people sort of get exposed to more things, right? No issue. I think that we've all sort of gone into the workplace, and soon enough you also start getting a better sense as you meet more people, right? Where interesting things to you would be, including sustainability and other things. So I'm sort of of 2 minds, right? That try to actually figure out what things you're interested in, what resonates. Try to use sort of your family, friends, and sort of network to get exposed a little bit sort of wider to opportunities, right? But then look, as long as you get the right quadrant, you're fine, right? Because careers actually get developed over time, and I'm sure the 4 of us can tell you careers are not managed really. You understand careers looking back, but you have to live your life going forward, right? So I can explain to you, obviously, how is it that I got here, right? But it was actually a bit of a discovery journey, right? So again, maybe too broad, I guess, but the idea being actually started with what you're interested in, get a wider exposure, to opportunities out there, and then it'll be always sort of a journey of discovery as you go through your career. Right?
Perfect. Thank you, Fernando. So with that, actually, I'm thinking we move to some last words here. So can we just pull up the slide deck here? Just give us a second. Perfect. So I want to leave you with some words of wisdom, I guess. You may have been, found that conversation quite exciting. Hopefully, you got some takeaways and maybe some places to go and investigate and start thinking about how you may want to get involved if a career in sustainability is a career for you. Some things to point out. So if you're at the point where you're planning, say maybe you're in grade 12 or even in grade 11, and you're planning for post-secondary school, a good place to start is by going to the Bolt Online website. So you can see here we've got a QR code on there. You can scan that. And you'll see there that there's a sustainability and renewable energy and construction student award. And this is a dedicated financial award for $3,000 for an individual who's pursuing their studies in a program related to renewable energy and sustainability in construction. So I want to point out deadline for submission on that is Friday, April 28th. So you've got just under 10 days to try and get your application there, but that's a good place to start. As well, if you want to start looking at different pathways, a good place to look for green jobs is the goodwork.ca/jobs website. We've got a QR code on the screen there. They have jobs from all facets. So you could even get a summer job in sustainability right now if you're looking for a summer job. So good timing. I would totally look there. And then, lastly, if, ultimately at the end of the day, a career in sustainability isn't a career for you, that's completely fine as well. But we all have a responsibility to do something for our planet, because without our planet, we wouldn't be here. So I ask of you, what can you do for Earth Week this week? I challenge you to get out and contribute. We had a list of 7 key things that, earlier on in the presentation that, were key areas that you could look at. Me, myself, this Friday, I'm planning, there's a park across from our office, and a group of us are going to go over and clean the park up and try and clean up some garbage. So, something as simple as that makes a difference. And I challenge you to get out there and do that. I want to thank everyone who attended today's session, especially our panelists. Very interesting careers. That's, why we had you on here. Very exciting talking to you about the opportunities of sustainability in our space. I hope the information was informative for people tuning in and gave you a broader perspective as to the career opportunities that pertain to sustainability in the construction industry. And like I said, get out there and make a difference and do something for the planet this week if possible. So I'll leave you with that. Thanks again. Bye for now.